good friend, Alondra Alba. How are you, Alondra?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited. We've been wanting to do this for a while, but actually, this is kind of a whole different thing. So, just so you know, Alondra is the president of the San Diego Hunger Coalition. But we actually met a couple of years ago when we both used to be staff for different council members for the city of San
Mm-hmm.
Diego. And we just fell in love with each
Yeah,
other.
the two Mexican girls just
Yeah.
matched right away.
Yes, we did. Like as soon as we met each other, it was like a magnet.
Yeah, and it was so fun because we had to go to a lot of networking events and receptions, so it was always nice to have a buddy there.
Yes. But now, you left there and you started out as what you were doing marketing, right, for the Hunger
I was
Coalition?
doing comms, Marcom, yeah, marketing and communications, and then months after, the board invited me to be the new CEO. So here I.
Girl. We have a lot to talk about. But before we talk about it, we are having our vino. Yeah, 2022 Chardonnay from Parra Wine. Salud.
Salud.
You tell me what you think of it.
It
Not your
smells.
typical Chardonnay, right?
No, I like it because it's very fresh, fruital,
Yeah, it's
kind
very
of
like citrusy.
pear
Yeah,
or like manzana verde, like green apple,
green
kind of.
apple. It's really light. It's not that buttery Chardonnay that you normally get with oak
Yeah,
barrels. It's in a steel barrel, so it's a lot lighter and fresher and um
I like it.
I
I like
know
it a
it's
lot.
really good. Sam, thank you. Sam from Para Wines, thank you. I appreciate it. Um, I want to just kind of get into all of the things, but we're going to mostly focus on what's happening right now when we're in regards to food insecurity. Um, but originally, you grew up in Tijuana. You're a TJ girl,
Yes.
hey. And I'm sure, but you went to school
I went to
in San
school in no,
Diego.
I went to school in
Oh,
Tijuana
in
too.
Tijuana,
Yes. And then I did a program in George Washington University in DC.
girl.
Yeah, but
Look
I
at
grew up in
you.
Tijuana with the best tacos. Actually, one of the biggest, like for me, like cultural shocks when I moved to San Diego is I remember being with my partner at that time. It was around 11 p.m. and we were in bed, and I was like, I'm craving tacos. Can we go get some tacos? And he's like, what are you talking about? Like all the taquerias close at 10. And I'm like, what? Is that a thing? Because in Tijuana, you always have access to tacos no matter.
I know because we used to go to TJ, when we're 17, 18, 19, until you hit 21, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, on the way home, on the way, you leave at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And when you're coming back, crossing back, you stop
You're
to
gonna
get
get
your
tacos.
tacos.
Yes, and even like I do remember like growing up with my family, even like we all have a taquero in la esquina, in the corner of the neighborhood street. So like you can see people in their pajamas eating their tacos before bed. So I do miss that a lot.
It's crazy. I was thinking because we used to, not all the time. Sometimes we'd drive through to Revolucion. Sometimes we'd park on the US side and walk over. But I remember like it's changed so much because I remember we used to know our way easy, right?
Mm-hmm,
Even
mm-hmm,
walking, we
mm-hmm.
knew how to get to and from, no big deal, blah blah. And now I'm like I would get so lost now if I just was doing it by myself or whatever because it's changed so much.
Yeah, and
It's
it's not easy to get to the border. And right now they are also reconfiguring some of the how to get to the border for like different things having changing in Tijuana.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's so crazy how different it is now.
it is. It is, but the food's still good.
Yes. So when you went to George Washington University, did you know you wanted to be in public policy in some way? Because everything you've done has been um, has been within the public servant, sphere. Is that something you always knew you wanted to do?
Yeah, actually, I've worked for government in both sides of the border, majorly focusing on PR, communications, community relations. And when I started the program in George Washington, I was still living in Tijuana. This was a virtual program for focus in Latin America, and it was in Spanish. And it was interesting because it was virtual way before the pandemic. So we had this kind. I think the platform was some kind of Zoom, but it was designed for school specifically. I think it was called Blackboard.
Oh
What?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Blackboard.
Okay. So I remember the first time I raised my hand and I was like, "Oh, this is so cool!" Because you click and then you see your little hand on your name, and then the professor will give you the will let you speak. So I remember doing that, and I did spend a week in person in DC, but it was mostly virtual, which it was a great opportunity as well because this program was focusing in strategic communications and no strategic governance, and I don't remember the name of the program. It was something communications and governance. And yeah, I've always liked working with the community, and I do think that the changes should come from the policy and from the systems, and there's a lot of great things that a lot of organizations do and community-based organizations on the ground. But I think nonprofits and community-based organizations, we are responding to something that the government it's not being able to
You're
provide for
filling the
residents.
yeah, you're filling
Yeah.
the void. Nonprofits, that's what they tend to do, right? Is they fill that void with because I work for so many nonprofits. I
Mm-hmm.
still work now. I'm still in nonprofit world, but it's always this like nonprofits. Many nonprofits exist because they're filling the void between the systems that aren't able to fully fund or fully whatever. And I think that's one of the things that I do love about the nonprofit sector is that at least what I've worked in, and you might see my dogs what walking across, but it's because there are most nonprofits are there to truly um, give back,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Give
Mm-hmm.
back into the community that they're serving, and I think that is something that's really beautiful. When you're working on in the TJ side, what were you doing as far as working within the public sector there?
Yeah, well, I started with different programs, more community-based programs, and then I moved to be the chief of staff of a council member in Tijuana. Then he moved to the assembly, state assembly, and then I moved with him, and I was doing comms. And then is when I decided to move to San Diego, and then I started with a nonprofit world here, work for a little bit with you at the city, and back to nonprofits.
I okay, so let's talk about each of our times at the city because I think, well, I just think it's really because I think so often people think they know how things work,
Yep.
and then you're reading things and you're like, "That's dude, that's not how it works."
Mm-hmm.
Like I see things. Oh, why is this person doing this? Why is this person that's that? I'm like, it's not that easy to.
Mm-hmm.
If it was that easy, it would be done,
Mm-hmm.
right? All
Mm-hmm.
of these things that people want done, if it was that easy, it would be done. So we're just giving you a little sneak peek into what the actual workings of at least city government, right? Which it ends up, and the higher you go, the more red tape there is, the more
Oh
things you
yeah.
have to go through. Um, what was your most surprising thing about working for the city?
Oh wow. You know what? I think growing in Mexico, we grew up with this idea that the US has everything figured out. So for me, I think working for the city and seeing that it worked basically the same, but in English instead of Spanish, I think that was the most surprising thing for me.
I would say for me, it was how like even people working in the same I hi this one even people working within the same office all have their own agendas,
Yeah.
right? Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
everybody's fighting for their voice to get heard because there's only so many resources you're able to use. There's only so much money. Right now in San Diego there's all of this stuff. Obviously there's homelessness that has to be addressed. There's the debacle with 101 Ash Street.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is these are things that have been happening over several administrations, and it's not something that just happened under one administration. These are years and years of things that have happened that have now fallen to this particular mayor and this particular city council that are now having to do things that aren't necessarily the most popular because they're having to fix things that have been systemically not fixed for years and years and years and years. So I always find that's really interesting of how, like, working in it, knowing my boss like I do, knowing your boss, of how things, and even though in San Diego it's an all Democratic city council and a Democratic mayor, that doesn't mean that everybody always agrees on everything. But I think that's a beautiful thing too, right? Like, it's okay because within, people within on the left, they don't always agree on how things should get done anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's city council or whether it's just people, right? Everybody has their own ideas of how things need to get done. Ay, ay, ay,
Yeah, we
so
all that, like you said, we all have the different ideas on how this should work. And one of the things that I learned a few years ago with another boss, she told me to keep in mind every time that I went into a meeting, to keep in mind that everyone wants, we all have the same goal.
mhm.
We, in this case, we all want the city to work. The difference is that we think that the approach should be in like we have different approaches, different ideas, different strategies. So just keep in mind all the time that it's the same goal, but it's not easy. Even when you're saying it's a whole democratic city council, and they sometimes don't agree with things. But I feel like you were saying when we're talking about potholes, I mean, it's not a problem of the current. I mean, it's a problem with the current administration, but it's not a problem that they created. It's been other administrations who haven't been giving maintenance to the streets and little things like that.
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing right now, and this is not just within San Diego, it's nationwide,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is not only homelessness but food insecurity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you've moved over from working for the city to working for, not for doing, working in communications, to now being the CEO of this. Now, I know, and if you don't want to share, it's okay, but I know that before you left the city, both of us were having some
Mm-hmm.
difficulties, um, in regards to, and I think it was crazy is our similar, like, we had similar
Mm-hmm.
difficulties and we were in two different offices. Um, and I will be very transparent because I think it's really important just to be that. But, like, I was having difficulties because, again, everybody has their own agenda, and it felt like people thought that people kept trying to go in my lane, and I'm not telling people how to make their policy and everything, but everybody kept trying to tell me how to do communications when they didn't have the experience in that, or they tried to do this, and ultimately I really felt like I was purposely sabotaged. I mean, how much what I
Mm-hmm.
was telling you and everything. In your case, when was your final straw that you were like, it's time for me to leave?
Oh wow, there were several moments, but I think the last one was done on. I remember it was International Women's Day. I was wearing a purple dress on purpose for that day, and I was called into the office of a couple of my supervisors at that time, and they told me that I was gonna be put under a performance improvement plan. So they were reading what it was in there. I was in disagreement with everything in there. The biggest complaint and the biggest thing was that when they told me that every time a resident was yelling at me and being rude at me, I should smile and nod, and I should smile more. And I'm like, so it's International Women's Day, and you are telling me that I should be
And
smiling
your
more?
former boss was a woman.
What? Yeah,
Or is a woman, not
she is
was.
a woman. She wasn't in that room at that time for that conversation, but she is a woman and she's a Latina and she knows all the struggles of this. So it was like, for me, was the biggest thing. It was like, it's time for me to leave, because it was like several things that were being that having being accumulated, and that was showing me how patriarchal that office was, and how they see me that I should just, my job was smile and be nice to everyone, when I'm like, no, why do I need to smile, and you know me, like most people, when I share this story, they're like, but you are one of the most smiling persons
Yeah.
I've met. On top of that, they knew I was going through depression, anxiety. I had been recently diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and I thought it was very insensitive for a supervisor to ask someone who was in chronic pain and going through depression and anxiety that they should be smiling more. So for me, it was the moment where I said, like, it's it's time for me. This is the universe telling me this is not my office anymore, and I started looking for another job. Yeah, he got his spot. And then I joined the Hunger Coalition.
When you join the Hunger Coalition, obviously, when anytime you go into a new organization, and we'll talk about all of the not only what you're doing, but how that affects your health,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? But when you went there, and I think you invited me to one of the events, and I met your your boss. But this is before you were getting they had invited you to become the CEO,
Mm-hmm.
and they had nothing but amazing things to say about you and
Thank you.
everything. What was your biggest challenge going into that, in regards to going into, because you are also fighting these things that you had just found out, like you didn't find this out till we already knew each other, of like the fibromyalgia. I remember you always being tired, and you're like, I'm so tired. And then you were living in Tijuana at that time, driving here every single day. So not only are you getting all of the Tijuana traffic, you're getting all of the traffic coming from the south to downtown, which is only about, so for those of you who don't know, it's only about 15 miles, but it could easily take 2 to 3 hours, mostly on coming through Tijuana.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it wasn't that far away, and I think on a perfect day going back home, it was about 30 minutes, which is, I think it's average or very good compared to other cities. But coming back to San Diego, I do have global entry, which it was nice for me because the lines are usually not more than 30 minutes. But again, it's the 30 minutes in the line and the 30 minutes of driving. I do remember one night when I was raining, and it was heavily raining, and then I was driving back to home, and again, like that 30-minute drive became 2.5 hours. So I was like, yeah, I cannot keep doing this anymore. I need to be closer. At that time, we were working here in downtown, so it's the downtown traffic plus the border crossing traffic. And but it was fun. I still miss being in Tijuana and having easy access to great food every time, and also the neighborhoods there, the neighbors, everyone. Like, I mean, I grew up there, so it feels more like home for me.
Yeah. So with all of that, how did, I mean, I know that the stress was probably exacerbating your condition when you're at the city.
Mm-hmm.
How was that affected once you moved over to the Hunger Coalition?
Oh yeah, it changed a lot. I think I was more able to have flexibility over my schedule, which it was an important thing for me because for people with fibro like myself, for me, it's like every morning when I wake up, I do a scan of my body, and then it's not until then that I know how I'm gonna feel that day. So some days were very challenging. Some days I woke up and I get up from bed to go to the bathroom, and I start walking, like patito like this, because I'm in a lot of pain. So when I transitioned to this other organization with less stress at the beginning, like we'll talk about this last year later, but at the beginning it was nice to have that flexibility of my schedule. Like, we don't have physical offices, so I'm working hybrid. I go to activities in person, but mostly I have that flexibility of not having to wake up at 5 a.m, get ready, drive, and all these things. So it has been helping a lot, especially on the days that I have a lot of pain.
And now that you're CEO,
That's a whole nother story. I think the first year, it was like taking a new job, because even when I was already part of the organization, I only knew about my portion, the comms part of it. But then I started like learning about the financials, HR, and finding different things that we needed to restructure. So it was a learning year, and it was hard in different ways. And then this second year, I was like, great, because I think we put a lot of things in place last year. So I thought, great, this is going to be our year to start developing and growing and having new ideas. But then with the current federal administration and all the changes to SNAP, that has been even more challenging in a different way.
okay, so let's get into that, because obviously the government is back, is quote unquote working again. It's back in session. Let's just say
Mm-hmm,
that.
mm-hmm.
Government is no longer shut down. However, obviously there was some big things that happened during the shutdown, but what explain what the San Diego Hunger Coalition does, because I think people can sometimes get the Hunger Coalition and the food bank
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
confused. So what exactly does the San Diego Hunger Coalition do, not only within, because you not only work within the city, but you go to conferences and everything, like to know what's going on nationally. So but what do you guys do? What are you here for?
Yes, we are a backbone organization. We work behind the scenes and we provide services to the organizations that provide direct services to clients, meaning that we do research. We have research and data. We have one of the most accurate methodologies to measure hunger in San Diego County, and also the meal gap and other like different indicators. But that's what we do. And with this information, a lot of some organizations, what they use them to they see our website, they see our maps, and they decide where to allocate like new resources or new, I don't know, like distribution points. Or there's this other organization in North County who's opening a mobile pantry. So they just don't want to have the mobile pantry driving around all North County. So they use our reports and our research so they know exactly where the highest impact of their mobile pantry is going to be. They use that data. They also use the data to apply for grants and information like in funding and stuff like that. The other part that we do, it's we have trainings, free trainings and free resources. So these organizations, we train their staff for free. So they only have to sign in their to register or staff their staff, and then we'll train them about how to enroll in Call Fresh. I'm sorry, SNAP. It's known as Call Fresh in California. So we train them on how to enroll them in SNAP, how to screen them, and what things to look and what things to make sure that they are not failing to provide that information. And then we also train them on the Navigator training, which is an overview of all the food assistance programs available in San Diego County, federal programs and local distribution points and stuff like that. And we also do advocacy work. And with the advocacy work, we focus a lot on data. We have our data available by zip code, but also available by electoral district. So every time that we meet with a legislator, we bring the specific data dashboard for their district so they know exactly what's the need. And then they can represent the people who they are serving. Um, so that's a little bit. For me, the easiest way to explain it is that we are kind of a free consultant for 500 partners in San Diego County. Otherwise, they will have to pay for the services that we are providing for free.
500 partners?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so what do you guys, because I know you went to DC
Mm-hmm.
this year, and you talked to other organizations across the country and everything that's going on. So what is going on particularly here in San Diego, and how can that be captured of in regards to what's going on regarding food insecurity across the country?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest things right now, and this is, I'm gonna start with this one because this might be the shortest one to get into, um, is that earlier this year the USDA decided to stop tracking hunger. They had this survey that they release every year with information about the hunger situation in the country. They just decided to stop doing it. Uh, so one of the things that we're focusing right now is we have been developing this methodology that has been reviewed by UCSD here, or like we have some people like in Cornell look at our methodology. So we are trying to see how we can partner with other organizations across the country so they can keep tracking hunger in their own regions. Because if we don't have the numbers, then it's too easy to pretend that doesn't exist. So that's one of the things that we are doing with national partners right now. And then the other thing that we talk about is all the changes that are coming to SNAP. A lot of qualification changes are coming. Also, some of the administrative costs that the federal government used to cover is now going to be taken by the or sent to the counties and to the states. So that's like an overview of what's going on. And I think the biggest thing that we all knew, or like hopefully most of us knew, is that during the shutdown, I think we were able to see a little bit of what's coming up next year for us with all these people losing access to their food benefits. So I don't want to sound like I'm being dramatic or putting or talking about or being like pessimistic, but this is going to happen for people next year.
So, what was the biggest thing that you guys were seeing in regards to what was happening during the shutdown? Like you're saying, qualifications are changing. What types of things, or what's going to make the most or the biggest impact in regards to the qualifications that are most likely kicking people off,
Mm-hmm.
right?
There are going to be some people who currently qualify because they are refugees or asylum seekers, or they are violence domestic violence survivors. These people are not going to qualify anymore, or they're going to need to have other qualifications criteria in order to keep receiving their funding. That's one thing. On the other hand, is that they are expanding the work requirements. Like, oh, I don't remember the exact same number, but I think there are some work requirements for some people in some during with a certain age to be able to qualify for SNAP. So you have to prove that you are working. I think back right now it's still at 54, I think. So I think it's gonna move up to 65.
Okay, so I remember, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I remember hearing something like this, and it was like you have to go in like every week or every month to put in your to qualify, right? Is that what's happening? Like they have to go in, and I think there was a concern that a lot of those people who are elderly or maybe who are low income and don't have access to technology, it's really going to impact those people too. Is that correct?
Yeah, right now there's this is the other thing, and it hasn't just happened with the food assistance programs. It has happened all across different programs, but there are a lot of changes that are coming up, but there's a lot of uncertainty of how that's gonna work and exactly what kind of work proof of work they're going to have to present. But definitely that's a concern. Like if you have to go to the county building is only open, I don't know, like 8 to 5. But if you have a full-time job, how are you going to take time from your work to go and present that proof of work? And the other thing is that the way that they are going to be starting to ask that you prove that you are working, not necessarily it's an easy process. And it's not that people are not working, the people who are part of SNAP, is that the way that they ask us to prove that that are working, it's complicated. So not a lot of people have the ability to fill an application, and not a lot of people know how to work or how to fill paperwork. And the other thing is like transportation limits as well, or like if I don't have a printer, or if I don't have internet access to internet. And that's the other thing, like the amount of benefits that you receive, it's based on your gross income. And to get to that number, you can also deduct some medical expenses or your electricity bill. And it used to be that you could also deduct internet from your income, but now it's not. So it's just like, and it's such a basic thing. And
Yeah.
also, even to find information about CallFresh or how to fill your application, you need internet access to that.
Yeah.
So like, there's a lot of little things that are changing, and then it feels like every 20 minutes there's something new that's coming up. So what we are trying to do in my organization is to make sure that the things that we are sharing and training our partners on are things that are confirmed, and we know for sure that that's how it's going to work.
Oh my, you guys must be scrambling
Oh
right
yeah.
now. Oh, I mean, because if you're trying to make sure if this is how it's going to work, but it feels like things are changing every day, right?
Yes.
Like it feels like this is, or not, it feels like this administration has their head. I'm just going to say it like this administration has their head up their ass. And the fact that we're not, look, I know some people may not agree with what I say, and that's fine. But the fact that we are not asking the wealthiest of Americans to pay their fair share, and it just feels like everything, like they just want more and more and more, and they don't even want to leave scraps
Mm-hmm.
for those who need it the most.
Yep.
Like that's how it feels to me.
Yeah, even with this shutdown, there were a lot of things in social media and conversations where people are like, I think there were like 42 million Americans are using my taxes to buy food. And I'm like, so you are worried, like different things that we can talk about that specific statement. But one of the things for me right now was, oh, at that point, was like, so you are upset because this many Americans who need food are using your taxes for that. The other question is like, how are we living in a country where 40 million people qualify to receive food assistance, because that means that
That is the biggest,
they are
that's
not
the
getting
biggest
paid.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not getting paid fair salaries. And then again, it's this corporate organizations or rich people who own businesses who are not paying fair salaries, and also they are not paying taxes, so it's this part that I'm like, I think that's the conversation that we should be having.
No, oh my gosh, that's so the conversation we could be having because, yeah, you're right. If people are saying these people are getting, well, why is that? Right? Like, why is that? I was just watching something where they were saying, they were talking about like health, like Medicaid and everything. And they were saying how um there's only, I think, 8% of people that are on, and I don't know if this is the same when it comes to like SNAP benefits. I'm guessing it's probably similar, so you could tell me. But out of those people, they've upped the work requirements like you said, but 92% of people are already working full time or multiple jobs, but they don't make enough even with that. Is that the same case
It's
with SNAP?
Yeah, Medicaid and SNAP. If you qualify for one, most likely you're going to qualify for the other one. Exact same thing for me is that it's so unfair that some people are working 2 3 jobs a week, and they still cannot afford to pay for rent, for food, for all the health bills. And then specifically in San Diego County, we're at the beginning of the year, we were back to pandemic levels of hunger, which mean and for me it makes a lot of noise when we're talking about not only California but also the US being one of the strongest economies in the world, and we're still talking about 1 in 4 people cannot afford to have 3 meals a day, which is for me, I don't know. I cannot imagine how we can be okay with that and not take action to see. Food is a human right.
Yeah. Well, especially when it comes to kids. So I used to work for
Mm-hmm.
a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I think all the nonprofits I worked with have involved children somehow. But when I was living in Dallas, I'm saying this in particular, our nonprofit, our office was in the middle of a HUD housing
Mm-hmm.
development, and when we finally got to the point where we would get hot lunches for them, a lot of times, and this was something that we see all the time, right? When kids aren't in school, a lot of times they're not eating
Mm-hmm.
because they
Mm-hmm.
get their food at school, because a lot of the, especially um these families that are qualified for Medicaid or Medi-Cal and SNAP, all of those, um they if the parents aren't home, these become latchkey kids as well, right? They're and oftentimes they don't have access to food outside of the home. Like the parents rely on them getting fed, and that affects what they do at school, their performance at school, that like affects everything. It can affect their self-esteem, affects obviously their health. And the fact that so many people, like, just because your kid can eat, what about their friend?
Mm-hmm.
What
Mm-hmm.
about what about the other kid that you see? What about the kid that gets probably made fun of, right? They for being weird or whatever. They probably are not in the best home situation. Not I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that for everybody, but oftentimes like these manifest into other things for kids, and I think it's just so horrific to have such a cold heart,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is being done? I know you guys have 500 partners. Not okay, I like I said, I know you have, now you guys are working to get this information, which I think is awesome. Are you guys like kind of being the model to be able to get this information out nationwide?
Not nationwide.
I mean,
Well,
for for
for
other places to be able to use the same kind of, not the same data, but the same
yeah,
way to
the
extrapolate the data.
methodology.
Yeah, the
Yes,
methodology.
absolutely. One of the things that we have been focusing when we go to conferences and things like that is to present our methodology and make sure that if they are not tracking hunger, then they can have a tool to track hunger as well. um, and going back to the child nutrition, that's the biggest thing, like in January I'm going back to DC because there's this program that's called Sunbugs. It's a program that provides $40 a month for 3 months per child during summer. So like you were saying, students who rely on school meals, when school are closed, they don't have access to that nutritious meal, which this program can provide that for the parents. On the other hand, what we have been noticing this year is that some students are not going to school and they're skipping school because parents don't want to send them because they're afraid of ICE raids.
I was about to ask if that's
Yes.
impacting you guys as
It
well.
has been impacting the students, and then going in addition to students not receiving the education that they deserve, they are also the students who rely on school meals, they are not receiving that meal a day too. So it's a whole systemic thing.
That's so crazy. I mean, I've noticed with the schools that we work with, I've talked to the staff there, and they've, definitely seen a drop in attendance of
Mm-hmm,
schools
mm-hmm,
because the schools we work with are underfunded schools, which tend to be schools that are full of kids that are, black and brown. And uh, the fact that kids should not be afraid to go to school. Parents shouldn't be afraid of sending their kids to school because I think there was already a fear with school shootings, right?
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
and I think so far we've been kind of fortunate in San Diego that it hasn't been a huge thing here, but it doesn't matter wherever it is, it's a huge thing, and that puts fear into
Mm-hmm.
kids. But then putting an additional fear of, if I go to school, I might not come home to my parents, and parents going, if I drop my kid off at school, I might get picked up, or they might try and go pick up my kid at school. Like there's just so many layers of fear that are happening right now. What can people do in regards to, because I think there's a couple of things that people, first of all, fact or fiction in regards to who is eligible to receive SNAP benefits, because I think there's a huge thing in regards to undocumented immigrants being able to just, how many times have you seen on social media like, oh, they're just selling their cards to get cash and get their free iPhone, like stuff like that. Kind of give us fact or fiction in regards to who's eligible for benefits, who isn't eligible for benefits, and how people can help and where can they find real information, because I think that's such a huge gap right now in our society is you're just listening, right? I'm trying to get people who actually know what the fuck is happening, not just the keyboard commandos saying
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
whatever,
mm-hmm.
just listening to some junk. So I'm not a junk podcaster, but some junk podcaster who doesn't really know information or is not trying to
Yes.
get real
Mm-hmm,
information.
mm-hmm.
So can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, I think that the first thing to see is the income, which is another thing. It's a whole another conversation because I believe for a household of one person to qualify for SNAP, you should be below 2,500 a year, which is
25,000.
30. See, sorry, 25,000. Yeah, twenty
But
five
that's
thousand a year.
crazy because already in San Diego, it's so
You
expensive.
cannot even live in San Diego if you have, yeah, like I think the average cost of one bedroom in San Diego I saw the other day was like 240,000, 400 a month. So
2,400 a month.
2,400 a month. So even if you find a $2,000 a month apartment, you have to at least earn 24,000 a year so you can afford that. So I mean, anyway, so that disqualifies a lot of people who could apply. But the first thing to see is that number, and depending on the household and it's the income. Again, we encourage people to apply because sometimes we're thinking, oh no, I'm above that number, but also we can look at your medical expenses or your bills and other things that you are paying for that could be deducted, and that could put you under that number. And then I will encourage people to go to our website, it's thehunger.org. We have resources available up to 13 different languages. So you can go there and you can see the different, especially the federal funded programs like WIC, SNAP, Sunbucks, and I think I'm missing another one. But those ones are constantly, and it's going to be practically the same across the country, except for Sunbucks. For Sunbucks, states had to opt in, so you have to check and see if your state decided to opt in. California luckily did.
Well, I'm just I say I kind of give that noise or smirk or whatever because we know that there's a lot of states who didn't opt into the additional Medicaid benefits. So those are probably the same states that
Probably.
didn't opt in for sunbugs,
Yes,
right? I mean, it's really sad. So if you're in one of those states, you know, where you're like, I wish I could. Again, it all comes down to who you're voting into office. Because if you're not voting, I'm just gonna be really honest, Londra, because
that's
I
how you
get
are.
that's how I am, and I just get so frustrated because you have people, you know, you have certain people complaining and everything, and I don't ever want to hear somebody say that they're pro life if they're not pro all life, right? In
Mm-hmm,
regards
mm-hmm.
to, like, this is all part of being pro life, right? Is making sure people have health care, making sure people have food to eat, making sure kids aren't going hungry so they can study in school, or so they can just live and have nutrition and be able to grow into a healthy part of our society. And so I don't think that I have people who are that probably listen. I don't know. Maybe they do. I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, when we become, like, all of these things start by our vote,
Mm-hmm,
right? If you're somebody, and this is something I also don't agree with in regards to people being like a one issue voter,
mm-hmm,
because you might be a one issue voter and vote for the person who agrees with you on that issue, but then you don't realize all of the repercussions that has on everything
mm-hmm,
else,
mm-hmm.
including stuff like this. So if people want, like, where do people, you said their website, in regards to people going, but if there are people outside of California who are like, well, where do I go, where do I start, how do I, not only if I qualify, but how do I know if some bugs is a thing, how do I know, like, just how can people start really getting some knowledge about what is happening, because I think so often if we're not experiencing it, we don't think it's a problem,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? Like, oh, well, that doesn't affect me, so I don't care about it. Are you seeing, well, are you seeing an increase in, because I know you said at the beginning of the year you're seeing food insecurity go to pandemic levels.
Mm-hmm.
Is it increasing even more now?
Well, our last number that we released was from August this year. We see it's increasing, yes, by the number, not necessarily by percentage, but by the number. And we are still waiting to receive the numbers from November. This is gonna have from the months that from the couple of weeks that people didn't receive their benefits. We believe there are gonna be some numbers there that we are gonna have to evaluate and release.
And it's only going to get worse now that the SNAP benefits, the qualifications have changed, right?
Yeah, only in San Diego County, 67,000 people are potentially going to lose their SNAP benefits. 67,000. That another number that, by the way, I'm not a numbers person, but once I started this job and I'm seeing all the importance of having data, because for me, it's like, it's a five. There's no political. If you want to interpret it that politically, you
Mm-hmm.
can, but it's just a five. But you can put any interpretation to that, right? But with the numbers in San Diego County, 67,000 people are potentially going to lose their benefits. Which and this is an USDA number. For every dollar that every spent $1 spent. Again, let me rephrase that. For every SNAP dollar spent, $1.79 come back to the local economy, which means that not this is not only going to be affecting the families who are not receiving the benefits. This is going to affect the whole region, because for those 67,000 people who are losing their benefits, we as an economy in San Diego County are going to be losing $250 million a year. And then if we add the administrative burden that now it's going to be into the county, that's around 300 million a year. So just because of SNAP, not counting Medicaid and all the other changes that are coming to policy, just because of SNAP, San Diego County is going to be losing $550 million a year. So I like to highlight these numbers. So like you were saying, it's not only about the families who are losing their benefits, it's something that is affecting all of us, because grocery stores are not going to be receiving the income. Then that's gonna mean that they're going to have to let go people, and it's going to be a
It's
whole
a
effect.
yeah, it's a tidal wave that happens,
Yes,
right? Like by one, it's a
domino
domino
effect.
effect.
And even and as this year, San Diego County has the highest inflation in the country. We're at 4% of inflation compared to the previous year, which is like, like it's all these little things that when we put everything together, then we can see how important it is for us to vote, how important it is for us to speak with our elected officials, to organize, to go to protests and marches and all these things, because there's like a little thing that we're doing has a big impact on all of us, not just the families who are going to be unprotected now.
Is there any way, because I know you said the USDA is which it's crazy to me that they're like, it's almost like, oh, well, then we'll just ignore it because then we can say, oh, well, no, it's fine. I feel like you could say it's fine because you don't say the numbers,
Exactly.
right? Like, oh, no, everything's getting better, but you're not reporting anything. Is there any way that whether it's us in California or across the nation, is there a way that we can object to this? Is there a way, or is it just by calling our reps, calling, whoever represents us into that in the House and the Senate, and saying like, "Hey, why aren't they tracking numbers anymore?" Or is that just simply a president, like, an executive branch thing, and the president's like, "No, I don't want," because we know he doesn't want to show anything that doesn't make him look good.
Of course.
So is that like just an executive decision, or can we call our representatives and demand that they continue to track these numbers?
I think it's important for representatives to know that we have interest in keeping track of this. Again, there's only so much they can do. There are a lot of things that, even talking with federal legislators representing San Diego County, I've heard from some of them that they are not receiving reports that they used to receive. They are not receiving numbers. It's very hard to communicate with the federal government. So they also don't have the information now that they need to keep advocating for us. So I do think it's important for elected officials to know that we want hunger to not go invisible. But I will encourage people to support local organizations like mine, or there are like a few other organizations in the country that they don't do specifically the research as we do, but they are still doing some kind of surveys or trying to track that. Then you can, sometimes a dollar, it's like, we think it's not a lot, but sometimes represents a lot of money for organizations like ours who are constantly doing the work.
Yeah.
And then again, I don't want to, I want to be mindful that a lot of people might not have a dollar to spare. But I think communicating with your neighbors and bringing up these conversations and changing the narrative about the families who receive SNAP benefits, it's also helping as a whole and as a community. Because I think it's important to remember that when a family, when a parent is not able to provide food for their family, it's not the parent who's failing their family. It's the system who has been failing all of us. That it's making us believe that having access to food, it's a matter of productivity, but it's not. It's a matter of a basic human need. And then I think all these conversations, sometimes we don't have time to volunteer, to call over elected officials, or to donate, but we can start those conversations with our families. And like, and even if you don't want to get political, we are approaching to Thanksgiving. We're going to be with our family, just to take a moment to talk with our family and be grateful that we're going to have a delicious turkey, or however, or tamales, however we want to. Just take a minute to all of us are sitting at the table be grateful that we have food, recognizing that a lot of people are not having access to a meal like that. And like when we are, I think I'm privileged enough to prepare a dinner for my family, and sometimes we're even like, oh, I cannot eat anything else, but un pancito or something like that. So I think being reminding ourselves that we are very privileged, that we cannot keep eating because we're so full. I think that's a part of changing how we see food assistance.
Yeah. How I know that you guys work with so many organizations. I'm so excited for your trip to DC. I'm going to talk to you about that once we're done. Maybe I need to be your videographer.
Maybe.
And while you're there. But how are the food pantries? Like, obviously, we have San Diego Food Bank. There's different food pantries all across, not only in San Diego County, but across the nation. How is all of this going to be impacting them?
It's already has been impacting them from the shutdown, and from the beginning of the year they have been reporting that they are seeing an increase on the need. Also reminding that San Diego County has one of the highest unemployment rates as well in the country. So Feeding San Diego, the San Diego Food Bank, and a lot of other partners there are going to be receiving the burden of all of this, because for one meal that a food bank or a food pantry provides, SNAP provides 9, which means that these 67,000 people who are not going to be receiving benefits in San Diego, now multiply that by 9, that's the amount of food that they are going to need now. And what they're going to do is they're going to look at the food distribution points, because we have such an amazing group of organizations in San Diego who put all these food distributions everywhere, but they are going to be the ones receiving all the heavy lift on this.
So, is there something that can be done? Because, there's been, I've seen it when I worked in restaurants, and obviously there's been, I think, reporting and stuff in regards to like all of the food that ends up in the trash.
Oh, yeah.
So, is there something that can be done in regards to like at the end of the day, it not going into like, I'm sure that there are already some restaurants and some grocery stores that could like that donate it, but how can we get those things more connected? So like we have so much food waste in this country. What are the things that we can do to help cut back on that, not only for ourselves but for restaurants and supermarkets?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The first thing that I'd recommend people is to buy the food that you are going to eat. And I do understand that sometimes going to these big places where you can get a big pack of
Like Costco and
yeah,
stuff
where
like
you
that.
can get 2 pounds of onions that you are not gonna eat. Well, yeah, it's more cheap that way than the things that you are not gonna eat. There are all these Facebook groups and people like buy nothing, and then it comes with the name of your neighborhood. So you could just post there, like, I have these 2 onions, who wants them? You're gonna be very surprised of how many people, like, in a less than a mile radius, are gonna be interested in some food. So that's something that we can do, not throwing away the food, but like giving it to our neighbors. The other thing is that specifically Feeding San Diego or Feeding America, they specialize on food rescue. So if you know a restaurant or an event who's going to have some leftovers, let's connect with them in advance so they can prepare, and they can let you know how to package the meals and everything, so it's able to other people to consume it, and it's safe for other people to consume it as well. And there are other applications, grocery shopping, groceries deliveries, that they specialize in food rescue as well. So sometimes an apple doesn't look pretty, so they are not going to send it to the supermarket, but it's still an apple, and
Yeah.
it tastes good. So we can buy those foods, and again, go straight to your farmers markets, buy from the farmers. Earlier this year in San Diego, we stopped receiving some, and I guess other parts of the country too, we stopped receiving some funding that was directed to the farmers and to schools to be able to buy produce directly from the farmers. So the farmers are being affected. And again, if the farmers are not receiving the money, the price of the food is going to go up, because they still need to pay for water, for labor, for
Yeah.
all these things. So it's like very little things that we can do, but it depends on what your capacity is at this time, and what do you what do you have the willingness to do, and also how's your time. And the other thing that I want to mention is that sometimes our mental health is not there. And I think if you feel like, oh no, I cannot do this right now, I think by taking care of yourself, you're taking care of all of us. Because once you feel ready to go back and help, then you're going to be more productive and you're going to be helping more people. But it's okay to take a time off. And I say, sometimes I say, I don't want to see the news at all. I don't want to know anything because I'm tired. So it's okay to take a break sometimes too.
Girl, I have to balance that better because like Antonio, my husband Antonio, um he doesn't like he'll watch local news,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because he's like, "Oh, well, what's going on in the city or whatever." But he does not like watch like national. He does not want to watch it because he's like, it's too depressing. I
It
can't
is.
handle it. And I mean, girl, you know how I am because working in politics, obviously, you become a news junkie.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we worked for the city, and especially me being the comms
Mm-hmm.
person, I had to watch it all the time. Like I had it. We each so how it is in San Diego is most people like the council member's office has a TV, the chief of staff, you're like all in all of the individual offices, and a lot of the cubes had their own television sets so you could watch the news, you could watch the city council meetings, you could watch all of those things because we constantly like when you work in government, you constantly have to know what's going on. So you have to watch the news. You
Mm-hmm.
have to know because if something comes up, you need to be prepared. So if something came up in our district, in my district or your district, and me being the comms person, I had to be like, okay, go straight to the council member. This just happened. This was in our district. What do you want us to do? What do you want me to write a press release on it? Do you want me to write a statement? What do we need to do? Like, those are things that we had to keep. So I've just become accustomed to it.
Mm-hmm.
I've cut
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
down on it a lot, but I've become accustomed to it and I will get sucked in to all of that.
Yeah, one of the things that I stopped doing, I used to have my Google Home telling me the news in the morning while I
Mm-hmm.
was just not making my bed and my coffee. And there are some voices of certain politicians that I cannot hear anymore. So I
I
stopped doing
can't,
that.
it's very hard to hear the president's voice. I'm not going to lie.
And I also follow media in Mexico, and same thing. That's a whole another conversation, but same thing. So now what I do is I ask my AI, like, give me the summary of the news related to Snap or to Week. So that's easier because I feel it's under my control how much I'm consuming of media.
Yeah. No, that's so true. We have to, how is your, how, like now, how are you doing physically? Like, how is this, with being, because obviously being the CEO, it takes up a lot of time, it takes up a lot of energy. How is that affecting your health?
Thank you. Well, this year has been more challenging physically too. Different things like I'm seeing a cardiologist now. Different things that has been happening, and I've been having to be very uh, I don't know, having hard conversations with myself and see how much of this is consuming me, but how much of this is also my passion. And for me, I'm trying to find the balance of like meditating in the morning, stretching in the morning, so I can have a better day, or at least anticipate that I'm gonna have a better day. But on the other hand, I grew up when was growing up. I remember seeing my mom skipping meals. Back then, for me, it felt like something that adults do, like they don't eat.
Mm-hmm.
But then growing up, I realized that my mom was skipping meals so my sister and I could eat. So every time that I feel very tired, I think about that. And I said, well, maybe today I'm not going to do 100%. But right now, the energy that I have is at 10%. And if
Mm-hmm.
I give that 10%, that's 100% of what I can do. So I've been having to be very reframing the way I see my own productivity and the way I see the work that I do, thinking that sometimes 10% is your 100%, and then I feel it helps me. It makes me feel better. The other thing as well is taking breaks and taking a moment to just go to the park during the day, just like if I can go to Valle de Guadalupe for a night, feels good because the drive is beautiful. I'm out of my routine. So I've been having to be very intentional about that, and understanding that I have chronic pain, and this is gonna be part of me. It's not now a disease or a chronic thing. It's gonna become unfortunately, part of my personality and who I am and how I make the decisions about my time and my efforts. But I think like between having a very great group of friends, family members, going to therapy, and talking with my therapist about this, doing meditation, it's been quite a change, not only on my routine, but in the way I see myself too.
I want to key in on something you said because I think and I appreciate that so much, but also I think so many people we need to kind of reframe how we think of that. When you said sometimes I can only give 10%, but I'm going to give my 100% of that
Mm-hmm,
10%.
mm-hmm.
That I don't think I've ever thought of it in that way, but I think so many of us could really learn from that, right? Because sometimes we just don't have 100% to give. Sometimes we only have 50%, 10%, whatever. But guess what? If when I'm doing that, I'm going to give everything I can to that 50% that I can do or
Yeah.
that 10% I can do. So thank you for sharing that because I've never thought of it that way. And I think that's something that we could all reframe in our minds, right? And say, it's okay. It's okay. I only have maybe an hour, but in that hour, I'm going to do
Mm-hmm.
as much as I can, right? So if you're thinking, let's say, I just want to make it really easy for people to think about. We have 24 hours a day, and you're like, I have 10%. That's what, 2.4? Okay, I only have 2 hours where I can get like, and that's 10%, but I'm going to give everything that I have in that two
Mm-hmm.
hours.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, I think that's a really easy way to think about it,
Yeah.
right? Um, so that's such a good, like,
I
that's
just don't want to
so
take
good,
credit because
Alondra.
I didn't come up with this. It was my now boyfriend, which that's another chisme that I haven't told you yet.
Uh-huh.
We'll do it after the
Yeah.
podcast. But I remember like one morning I was in a lot of pain and the anxiety of a lot of things. I was crying, and I had this conversation, and he's the one who told me like, you cannot, because I was telling him I'm so frustrated because I'm not at my 100%, and I know how much I'm capable of doing. He's the one who put it that way for me, and that helped me a lot to reframe. And the other part that I've been doing as well is that, like I was like, someone invited me to a community event or like a meeting or something, and I'm like, oh, it's in the afternoon, the evening, I have nothing to do, okay, I'll go. And now for me it's like, no, like this day I'm going, what I have to do is being at my house, watch TV, have a glass of wine. I do have something to do. So also prioritizing myself and saying that my time with myself, with my little fish and watching TV, it's something that I have to do. And it's not like, oh, I don't have anything, I'm just gonna be home, then yeah, I'll help you. No, I have to do something for myself first. And then if I have time, I'll help you.
Yeah. No, that like you do have to take care of yourself first because
Mm-hmm.
you can't give anything to anybody else if you can't
Exactly.
like give to yourself first. Um is like I know you have these things, you guys do monthly reports. I know like there's just been a lot, but I want to make sure like if there's something that I didn't ask because I didn't write, like I wish this time I would have written down questions, but I just was going off the like what I was feeling in
Mm-hmm.
regards to asking some of these questions. What like if there's anything else that you want to add, what is it like, is there anything else that you want to add to make sure to that the impact of this conversation is truly felt by people who are listening or watching?
I think for me, it's the biggest thing is realizing that the situation that we are right now, it's because a system that has been put. put this way. And I think we have to realize that as a community, we are the ones who decide where policy should be focusing on and what the programs should be doing and how the government will be served the residents. And I think once we realize that we have that power and that the government is there because we're allowing them to be there, I think that changed also the way that we see our community and the power that we have. And then for me, I'm very passionate about food justice. It's part of who I am, part of what I want to do. But for other people, might be arts. For other people, might be research. For other people, might be health systems. So I think every single thing that we do, doing it representing what we are passionate about and what we wish our children or nephews. I don't have children, but when I see my niece, I'm like, what kind of world? And I think this sounds very cheesy, or like we always say, what kind of world do we want to leave for our children? But that's true.
Yeah.
What kind of world I want my niece to receive after me? What kind of role model as a female Latina female role model I want her to see? So I think when we realize that we are not only impacting ourselves, but we are part of a whole community, I think it's when the real change is going to come. And this is a time for us to collaborate and to find common ground instead of focusing on the difference that we have. We might have a lot of differences, yes, because we're humans, and that's the beauty of it. But focusing on what brings us together and how we can fight together for this, I think that's the biggest part for me.
I did remember something that I wanted to, and I don't know if you know what the numbers are or not, but speaking of finding the things that bring us together, or because we all are so, we're different, but there we also have a lot in common. I think there is a particular portion of this country who thinks it's only black and brown people who are receiving government assistance, who are receiving SNAP benefits. However, from what I understand, and you will be doing what you do, that's not the case. Do you happen to know what those numbers are in regards to who receives the assistance?
I don't have those numbers at the top of my head right now, but yes, it's all of us. It's not only brown and black communities. However, they are being disproportionately affected as well. And also, people with disabilities and seniors are other communities that usually we don't think about them. And in San Diego, when we think about places like La Jolla or Coronado, where it's this beautiful neighborhoods by the beach with beautiful houses, we think that there's no need of hunger there. But some of these seniors, they bought their houses like 30 years ago, 50 years ago, when it wasn't expensive for them to buy them. And now they're living in this beautiful house. They're still paying property taxes, but they don't have food on a daily basis. So I think being mindful of every person that we see, they are struggling and they're going through something. And unfortunately, the need of food is something that we don't talk about because we're ashamed. We think it's something that we should be ashamed, and there's a stigma around it. So just keeping in mind that all of us might be needing food.
I've been on SNAP, and you're right. It was one of the hardest things that I had to do was apply,
Mm-hmm.
because I was so ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, there was this 3 month period before I started at the city, and I had lost my job because we had lost our contract, and that was my contract, because of the pandemic. And that was one of the hardest things I had to do, was to go online, and it was my mom who was like, Mija, you do it, go on there and apply. And I was like, shoot. And even when I applied for rental assistance, that was one of the hardest things I had to do as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes, it was not ever a position that I ever thought I was going to be in. And I think so often we don't think of ourselves of being in that position.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't think of, what if I have to be in that position? What would I do? What would I, like, we don't think of all those things. And, anybody who's listening or anybody who's watching, I implore you to think, like, what would you do?
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, what would you do if you're in that position?
And
And
how would you feel,
yeah,
like as a person? Because I mean, you 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 are a professional Latina, you have all these things, blah blah blah. It's not that you don't want to work, it's not that all these things, and then suddenly, like, everyone tells you that once you do A, B, and C, you made it
yeah,
in life, and then suddenly that's not how life works.
yeah. I think, we just have to we have to have more empathy. And I know that we don't think of situations until it affects us. But sometimes I think we need to think like, this could affect me, right? Like, or just, what would I do? And I think you bringing up the examples of seniors who bought their homes so long ago, and now, obviously, if they were in this situation now, they wouldn't be able to buy their home,
Mm-hmm,
right? The
mm-hmm.
home that they have now, they wouldn't be able to buy that. And so they're grandfathered into their property taxes. They're being able to pay that, but then they don't have enough to be able to eat,
Mm-hmm.
maybe once a day, if that. Sometimes maybe that, and nobody should be forced into that
Nobody,
position.
nobody. And not just food. A lot of the focus of our organization is nutrition security, because we can have a ramen cup every day, which, by the way, is kind of my guilty pleasure because I think they're
I
so good with rancheritos and Valentina. But
hear ya.
but that's not sustainable long term. It's gonna
Yeah.
create health issues. So we all should have access to fresh produce too.
Okay, so actually the other question I was going to ask is, I had a guest on a while ago, and we were talking about, and she said she doesn't call it food desert, she calls it food apartheid, because
Mm.
it's a choice for these companies
Yeah,
of where they're.
absolutely.
So how do we put pressure on these, or whether it's to get a small grocery store in, or whether it's a big grocery store, to get into these neighborhoods that need it, so there isn't, speaking of nutrition, so there isn't just fast food on every corner, but there are options for healthy, fresh fruits, vegetables at a cost that people can actually afford,
Mm-hmm,
right? Because
mm-hmm.
it's almost like a privilege to be able to afford fruits and vegetables versus, um, and right now even that's going up. But I guess if you go to local farmers, I mean, there's just all these things, right? Like, so how do we put pressure, um, whether it's the city, county, or whether it's just private, companies, to be able to put even a small, because I'm in Barrio Logan, they shut down the neighborhood Walmart, right? That's the grocery store that
Mm-hmm,
got shut down.
mm-hmm.
How many people did that affect? So how do we encourage companies to invest in the communities, to be able to bring those things to that community?
I think that's a complicated answer because there are so many levels that will need, and at the end of the day, businesses, what they are looking is for the revenue,
Yeah.
to sustain that. I do think that there are some organizations and some projects, like we have worked in the past with a couple of them, addressing food deserts, especially in the East County, in San Diego County. Like that is the area who has the mayor, like, food desert. um, so supporting organizations, supporting research. Right now, this is the other thing that the current government is cutting the funding for research. So if we can support the research, then we are supporting the people who are showing the numbers, and then we can show the corporations what they need to put a supermarket or like a mini market in certain areas of the county. And then the other thing of course, it's always to share information about food assistance available in these areas, food distributions, and SNAP, or like other things that families can have access to.
Yeah. That's so nuts. I just wish I had the
And me
resources
too.
to be like, you know what, we're gonna have, a mini market here, and like, just a little carniceria with fruits and vegetables, or you can get like basic stuff. And the fact that there's so, because this a lot of the schools that we work with, obviously, like I said, they're underfunded schools. So sometimes I'll get there early and I'm like, well, I have like 20 minutes before I have to be there. So let me go get like something to eat. And I have to drive so far. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even get anything to eat. I'm having to drive so far. And then I think of like what's happening in this country. So Alondra, thank you for sharing this
Thank you.
like, it's so important. And I know we're particular to San Diego because this is where we live, but this is happening all across the
Mhm,
country. And the
mhm.
fact that there are organizations across the country that are doing similar work. Um, but we need to support these organizations, and we need to put pressure on our elected officials
Yeah.
to make sure that these numbers do not fall, like these numbers don't stop. I mean, they've stopped, right, from the federal government, but we need to put pressure on our elected representatives to make sure that these numbers like can that
And
they
it's
pick them
part
back
of
up.
their priorities. Sometimes that I've done some lobbying visits, some elected officials, food security is not in their priorities. It's clean transportation, and I'm like, okay, that's cool, but you do know that you need people to ride your public transportation, and those people need to be alive, so they need to
Well,
eat.
and they need places to go. So well, it doesn't matter if you have clean transportation if it doesn't go to where the people need to go.
That's true. That's another thing. And but again, like if you are the kind of person who likes to go to town halls and communicate with your elected officials, or like post on social media and tag them, I think it's important for them to know that the voters, this is a priority for them, so they can represent us the way that we want to be represented.
Yeah. Well, I'll put the information for the San Diego Hunger Coalition in the show notes. But until next time, mi gente,
Thank
muchísimas
you.
gracias,
Thank you for the wine.
amiga. Oh, I finished mine a while ago. Hola, mi gente. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wine and Chisme podcast. If you would like to hear more wine and more chisme, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Saludos.